plan, and also, most importantly, give you an outlet to let you speak to us. So our goal tonight is to speak to you a bit about the plan development process, to talk about some of the conditions we felt were in place that required such a paradigm shift in the draft that was inherited by this administration and not adopted by the State Planning Commission after 7 years of cross-acceptance, and what we're presenting to the public today for potential adoption by the State Planning Commission. We'll talk a little bit about the vision and mission of the plan, high level, not in the weeds, vision and mission. Some of the guiding principles and goals, objectives, and strategies that we think this plan represents, and if implemented, would be a step forward for the state, for every region of the state. Some of the supporting documents and next steps, and then some contact information, so you can, we know we're not going to resolve everyone's questions or issues tonight. That's not our goal. Our goal is for you to leave the room knowing a little bit more and also feeling that you had a part in helping this plan get better towards the final draft. I want to talk to you a little bit about planning, zoning and regulation at the state level, and capital investment. This is a plan that has an undercurrent of land use in it. It does talk about geography, but it's not per se land use plan that you may be used to in your local town. All of you come from New Jersey. Everyone lives in a town that has a master plan with a land use element and zoning codes that are consistent, at least in principle, with that master plan. This, the State Planning Act of 1985 that required the state to develop a state plan is a curious piece of legislation. It basically said, develop a plan that's supposed to do X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't give the state of New Jersey any authority over your local land use as a result of the plan. So this plan is supposed to be non-regulatory in nature. No municipality is required to opt in or comply with it. The way we're trying to use this plan, because it's been tried to use, it's been tried in the past, say, last round or two of the plan, as more of a regulatory tool to guide land use and co-op local decisions. This plan, we recognize up front that it's non-regulatory and the local land use decisions are not required to comply. So we didn't write a land use plan, because why write a land use plan if local governments have involved? So how are we going to use this plan, and how does it have any value? Well, the state of New Jersey has authority over resources that are not governed by local governments. Through the federal government and laws that were passed in the 60s and 70s, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the state of New Jersey is required through primarily the Department of Environmental Protection to regulate resources that can't be regulated properly in the local government. So we have this home rule for zoning, density, things like that, and then we have the state authority that lays over the entire state to regulate those critical natural resources. The state's also involved in making investment decisions through the Department of Transportation, and also has authority under certain things under the Department of Community Affairs, that the state's regulatory authority and the local government's home rule are always going to be, there's always going to be a little friction there. You can understand that. So this plan is put in place to help manage the state's regulations and also try to focus our capital investments. So it's not any sort of effort whatsoever to take over your local land use controls. This plan, this administration, the lieutenant governor, the governor have no interest in doing that. So we also all need to realize that there's several different layers of planning. You have a state plan, you've got your county plans, you've got a regional plan like the Pine Blues that may impact parts of your county, parts of the counties down here, and you've got your local comprehensive plan that are then complemented by local regulations, county regulations per se when it comes to drainage and road access. Regional regulations down here would be the Pinelands, in the North Jersey, that would be the Meadowlands and the Highlands. So we've got this really interesting dynamic in New Jersey where you've got these layers of plans, layers of regulations. And the regulated community and the private citizens of the state find it really difficult to engage and plan and zone with this complicated framework. So one of the tenets of this plan is to try to, from the state's perspective, minimize that best they can and best they can control by focusing almost primarily on the state of New Jersey and its role in this complicated land use system. So we know that when landowners and property owners, we're not just talking about developers, we're talking about farmers and fishermen, property owners looking to put a back porch on their house or an addition on their house. What happens is you've got this stuff going on up, down, left, right, local, county, state. And this plan, part of the goals here are to try to help minimize that as much as can so we can have growth that is supported locally flourish. The state planning, statewide planning, has been a feature of state government since the 20s. So before there was any such thing as the parkway or the turnpike, there were things like statewide land use plans. It was done much differently back then, but this is not a new obligation for the state. It's not a new thing that the state is doing. So we have plans from the 20s, plans from the 30s, plans from the 50s that we have on file here. Plans from the 70s, it's called the State Plan Guide. And in 1985, the legislature passed the State Planning Act that was side by side, basically the State's Fair Housing Act, to put in place a requirement, put in place a State Planning Commission to review, work with local governments, and put plans together that met the requirements of the Act. Who in this room has been involved in cross-acceptance, plan endorsement, center designation? Who's heard these stories before? Right, so we're amongst friends here. I don't have to give a deeper lecture on the history here. So you may remember us as the people who tried to cross-accept the map in about 4 or 5 years ago that was very heavy on DEP requirements. You may know us as the office that brought you through the process known as plan endorsement, that you may or may not have enjoyed that process. So those were the two kind of front shows of our office the past 10 years. A map that was getting more and more detailed into people's backyards, and also a process that some planners described to us as a cruel hoax. One where the state up front promised to all these carrots and all this flexibility, and in the end, when the towns came home for the benefits, the state had nothing to give them. In addition, the promise was also not just incentives in terms of money, but flexibility with state agencies, so that when an issue triggered DOT, DCA, DEP involvement, that because you got plan endorsement, you were going to get flexibility, you were going to get cooperation, and you were going to get coordination. And the municipalities that have participated in that process have not reported that they feel that was a benefit that they received. Some municipalities are really happy with plan endorsement, and some municipalities have done a really nice job under it. But the reality is only 17 municipalities in the state have achieved that out of 565 now. And that doesn't really get us to scale of actually, moving these issues forward in the state appropriately in the state plan. So two of the things that this plan does, and I'll get to the details of it under the goals section, is it recommends discontinuing the practice of developing a state plan policy map or replacing it with a criteria-based system that has a lot more flexibility built in. The other thing that we're proposing to do under this is to discontinue the plan endorsement process, but then carry forward any benefits that would be available to towns that meet whatever high standards we have moving forward, so that time that they've spent isn't wasted. In both situations, what we're doing is we're basically creating a category of land under basically a priority growth investment criteria, where these are the areas where local government and state governments come to agreement that that's a place where we want to see prioritized investment and regulatory flexibility. So we would see that the areas, the centers that are designated under plan endorsement or under the past center designation process are carried forward with that designation for that time and expense is not wasted. So the process to revise and re-adopt the 2001 plan is by statute known as cross-acceptance. That began in 2004. In 2009, when the Christie administration was coming on board, that plan, that process had not been capped. So what we did is we inherited a 6-year-old process that when you look at the statements of agreements and disagreements from our plan, and when you look at, when you listen to the local governments, not many people felt like that there was any sort of consensus reached by that process. So in some ways, not finishing the process by accepting the plan that was agreed over time was a good thing. This high level of disagreement was in place when the Lieutenant Governor was a sheriff in Monmouth County and when the governor was a prosecutor. So it's not that we are coming in trying to knock over the apple cart of a successful system. We think that the improvements to the state planning, the new state plan and the state planning framework will really help us have a better state planning system that actually meets the requirements of the State Planning Act, but also to actually be helpful instead of trying to stand in the way of their goals and objectives. The transition reports from this governor and the Red Tape Commission findings basically reviewed two options: was either get rid of state planning altogether and try to engage with the legislature, try to get rid of the obligation, or to reframe state planning in a way that is actually supportive of targeted economic growth and also targeted land preservation. Luckily luckily for the state, the Lieutenant Governor chose the latter, was to re-look at how state planning was conducted. Last year, we spent at least the first part of last year going around the state, met with all the counties, many municipalities, different stakeholder groups that had a stake in this, local officials, environmental groups, building community, people that were interested in transportation and circulation, and others in the environmental justice community, the agricultural community. We had a special meeting set up by Farm Bureau, the Eco Complex, and they basically got a chance to tell us what was being done wrong. We took almost all of that in and took all of it in pretty seriously. So through this continued cross-acceptance process, our office worked with the steering committee of various state agencies that have a key role in physical and economic development in the state, along with the Lieutenant Governor and Governor staff, and basically re-proposed a new draft to the State Planning Commission that we felt was basically respected the right scale of state involvement in state planning, knowing that we do not have control over local zoning, and also recognizing the fact that we have a huge responsibility under federal law to regulate important features of the state. We also have a huge responsibility managing our state farmland and open space programs. So those are resources that are really important to local governments as they try to meet their goals. So it's not that the state doesn't have a role, it's just we really figured what is the right scale of involvement for the state of New Jersey to involve itself at the kind of planning that doesn't get into people's backyards. An executive order was issued that would put together a steering committee of state agencies to deal with the obvious reality, and I don't need to tell anyone in the room this, that the problem of the state plan is that the state of New Jersey pretty much didn't listen to it. It almost exclusively imposed responsibilities on local government and policies on local government. And when it came to the policy to kind of put on itself, it didn't really listen to its own plan. So what the steering committee is in place to do is once that the plan is adopted by the State Planning Commission, it will use the goals, values, strategies, objectives of the state plan and implement it in the state's role. Much of the implementation will take place in our state departments. Our Office for Planning and Advocacy, which is now housed under the Department of State and the Lieutenant Governor, we are a ragtag group. We don't have authority, we don't have money to do these things. We don't preserve land, we don't regulate land. Our role is going to be to help the Lieutenant Governor organize state government to be a better partner in this really complicated framework of land use, planning and zoning regulation we find ourselves in the state. So that would be our role. And the executive order puts that in place and puts us in a position to help. So we're calling this a strategic plan. It's the state plan and redevelopment plan by statute. But we're calling it the strategic plan because we believe that any complex organization needs a strategic approach to be successful. We may not all agree with the things that I'll talk to you about the goals or the balance that we think is in this plan, but we all have to admit to ourselves that the state of New Jersey is a complex organization. Lots of moving parts, and if you you don't have a good plan, good structure to organize yourselves, you really have an opportunity to be disorganized and have one department telling the regulated community or the municipality one thing, and another department telling the towns and the regulated community the other thing. And as a result, whether you're a regulated community or the town, you don't know what to do. So it creates a lot of consultant time, it creates a lot of expense, it creates a lot of permitting trouble when you want to do things as simple as maybe put up a fence in your pasture. So these are the kind of things that we're trying to resolve at the state level, not town by town, but at the state level, so that when you're doing the things in your local government that are not violating state or federal law, you have a better partner, the state of New Jersey. So we're trying to be more resourceful because we all have limited fiscal constraints that we're all dealing with at every level of state government. We're not the only ones that are broken. So this complex business is trying to rethink its organizational strategy so we can be more successful, especially when fundamental changes occur. And we think that the shift in the market that we've experienced in the last 5 years is one of those fundamental changes that requires us to rethink how we plan at the state level and how we work with our local governments to see that targeted growth can actually occur. Some of the things that we think that New Jersey is really blessed with is a talented and well-educated workforce, a network of physical infrastructure that, though needing of investment, is something that can be a strength if leveraged properly. Our geography is unique and diverse. We have Ohio, we've got the Pineland, we've got the coast, we've got our farms, we've got some vibrant downtowns in the state that are magnets to populations that enjoy living in a more urban environment. We've got industry clusters in the state of key industry sectors that produce good wages for our citizens, and we want to retain and attract more of that. And we think that some of the failures of the state plan story really relate to leadership at the high level that didn't really drive a strategic organizational structure and use the state plan appropriately. So we feel like we've got strong and committed leadership that knows its place. They know that they won't want to take over local government. They know that the state plan can't change local land use. And they've asked themselves, what can this be good for, if not that? We've also identified weaknesses and threats to our state's prosperity, including the obvious downturn in the economy that's got every level of government rethinking the way it delivers its services and seeking efficiencies under every rock. We've lost, in the sprawl decade, we've lost a lot of ground. We had land consumption 5 times our rate of population in the 2000s, and that's stopped. And we think that the market has fundamentally shifted where the next market, the next generation of home buyers, according to not us snarky land use planners, but it's the market that's telling us through the realtors, through the building community, where the builders are getting under contract, is that we think that the next wave is going to be seeking a different kind of land use pattern that every region of the state can provide, not just the cities. So it's going to take rethinking the way we plan and the way we zone to accommodate that next wave of development pressure so that New Jersey isn't passed by as other states in the region are trying to transform the way they operate to capitalize on the next market push. Our cities, our urban centers of this state were always a priority for any sort of statewide plan. And as much as we've talked about it, our urban centers continue in many ways to underperform and are not fundamentally generating the resources to meet the service requirements of their own citizens, which requires the state of New Jersey and the people that are not living in the cities to step up and subsidize the budgets of those places for those cities. So we think a healthier New Jersey is one that our urban centers are healthier fiscally and healthier environmentally and are nicer places to live and are safe and with good education so they can stand on their own. The changing demographics, the next generation of home buyers, based on many measures, are looking for different places to live, different than the typical urban suburban sprawl, that is just fine. And we're not saying that there's going to be no market for suburban housing in the state in the future. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that New Jersey would be better if we had more options. If we had good, healthy, nice suburbs. If we had good, healthy, smaller urban centers, and we had good, healthy cities. So we have options. So if people want to live in the suburbs, they live in the suburbs, and they can afford to do that. That's great. If they want to live in the cities, they can live in the cities. What we're talking about is having a state full of good options for our residents, so that all of us can have a place that we find home and want to live long term. So we have a vision and a mission in place here that talks about New Jersey being a national leader in private and public investment to support these communities, so we can attract and provide strong economic opportunities by also preserving our state's natural resources and creating healthier communities to work, reside, and recreate. We plan to do this by having a mission in place that every city can take seriously, to focus New Jersey's policies and investments on regions by fostering targeted job growth, supporting effective regional planning, and preserving the state's critical resources. So we are going to be, our plans are less about getting into your backyard, more broader, and so you don't see a map that you can look at your property and say, what does New Jersey want for my property? Because that's not the goal of this plan. The goal of this plan is to focus generally New Jersey's policies on working with local governments to see that the local goals are met. So we heard that the plan shouldn't be a top-down approach to full compliance with the statewide land use plan. We don't think it is. We also don't think that we are creating another layer of bureaucracy. In fact, I think it's the opposite.